Welcome everybody to this evening's satsang, Bhagavad Gita satsang. I'd like to begin by reading from the Gita. I'm going to read 3 or 4 different stanzas because they are all on the same theme, forming a logical progression. This is from the 3rd chapter and starting with number 27. The universal impulse toward activity springs from the 3 gunas, or qualities of nature. Man, however deluded by egotism, thinks, I am the doer. And Krishna goes on to say, offer to me, instead of you thinking I am the doer, offer to me your every deed. Devoid of egotism and desire, inwardly centered in the soul, ever calm and free from worries, be dutifully engaged in the battle of life. True devotees, focusing on practicing my precepts and the true teachings of others, achieve freedom from all karma. Even the wise act according to the dictates of their own nature. All living beings obey the dictates of nature. Of what avail would be mere suppression? And then the very famous one that is often quoted, to do one's own duty even unsuccessfully is better than to do someone else's duty successfully. It is better to die while trying to accomplish one's own duty than to settle for another's duty, though safer and easier, which course is filled with danger and uncertainty. When I first read the Bhagavad Gita, or perhaps I should say more accurately, when I first heard Swami Kriyananda commenting on these stanzas in the Bhagavad Gita, I remember him commenting on this one about suppression. And when he talked about that, in my mind, this idea of suppression came up, and I was a young person at that time. And I had, and the message that to me that I garnered out of that was, oh, you shouldn't suppress your impulses, or don't suppress your emotions, or don't suppress this feeling or that feeling, and instead transmute them, channel them to a higher octave, you might say, like a bad habit. You have energy going in one direction, you don't want to suppress that habit. You want to rechannel it into somewhere else. Now, this made all very good sense to me. It made good sense, and I think it is true also, that interpretation. But, you know, the Gita can be interpreted on a number of different levels. Any great scripture is like that. And as time has gone by, I think there's another level of this that we also have to understand. I don't think it's limited just to what avails suppression. Don't suppress your impulses and transmute them. What he's saying, if you listen closely to that reading, is Krishna is saying, don't suppress your nature. Don't suppress your true nature. And instead, he says, what avails you? All men act according to the gunas to express their nature. What avails suppression of that? Now that's very different, or can be very different, to put it that way. And I remember a story about, I've told it before, but I like it, so I'll tell it again. But there's a fellow who was walking in the forest, and he's walking in the forest, and he comes upon a small lake or pond there, and there's a sadhu standing in shallow water of the pond of the lake. Perhaps he's bathing. But he looks closely and he sees that the sadhu reaches into the water, and there is a scorpion has fallen into the water. So he reaches into the water and he rescues the scorpion out of the water, and the scorpion stings him, stings him. And, and so what he does, but he holds it and he puts it up on there's a branch coming down over the water. He puts it up on the branch, but it is stung him. So he's rescued it though. So the scorpion is up in the tree now. The scorpion walks out on the branch, falls into the water again. So the sadhu reaches in, lifts up the scorpion and rescues it from drowning. The scorpion stings him again, and he puts it up on the branch again. So the fellow's watching this, and of course, you know how stories are, they're always 3 times. Scorpion walks down the branch, falls into the water, and what happens again? He stings him again, and he puts it. So this goes on, and so the fellow watching this can't stand it any longer, and he walks out there, and he says, "Well, sir, what are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm rescuing the scorpion. He's fallen into the water." And he says, "Yes, but it keeps on stinging you every time he does that." And Sadhu says, "Well, you see, that's its nature. And it's its nature to sting. That's what the scorpion does." And he says, "Yes, but why do you keep picking it up?" And he says, "Well, you see, to rescue the scorpion, that's my nature." And so in a sense, now of course this is a story. I'm sure probably he would, the sadhu would probably find another way. Perhaps he could have used a stick but nevertheless, it illustrates the story that here we all act according to our nature and guided by the gunas. Since we ourselves need to understand what our nature is and act according to that nature. Now, does that mean when a person says, "Okay, my nature is to be," you fill in the blank, whatever it might be, maybe it's not such a good habit, I'll just do my nature. Well, it doesn't mean that. It means we act according to our nature, but in order to do that rightly, then Krishna goes on, which I didn't read. He says, "Serve me. Do everything you do to offer yourself to me, and use your act according to your nature, but lift your nature up to the very highest octave that you possibly can." But no 2 people, scorpion or sadhu, are going to be exactly alike. Everybody is going to offer their service, offer their whatever their being is in the very unique way. And for you to look and say, "Well, now Tatum can cook very nicely, I can't cook very nicely." For me to suppress my nature, for her to suppress her nature, and to try to do the others, it wouldn't work. I can assure you, it wouldn't work. But from my side anyway, we have to do our own nature, but we raise it to the highest level, the highest octave, because our natures are propelled by the gunas. Property, there's no avoiding it. Arjuna had to act. Krishna even tells Arjuna, he tells him, "You will be impelled by your nature to fight this battle." And of course he's talking about a deeper battle here, but even outwardly we think, because it is your nature as Kshatriya, you're going to fight this battle. So why not do it willingly and do it in the right spirit? Now what is that right spirit? Of course, it's, as he says, do it with non-attachment. Don't be attached. Be detached and act at the highest level. Act willingly. Do it, and he even says this, do it well. Whatever our duty is, do it willingly. Do it well. Be detached. Raise it to the highest level. And now each of us, because we're each on a different level, and we see what is outside of ourselves. We see the world, 2 people looking at the very same situation, will see it very differently, depending upon their own life experience, their nature. But, and he also says in here, don't criticize the other. If they're seemingly, Krishna says, if they're seemingly acting in a lesser way, he says, don't criticize. Instead, inspire another to prefer good action as opposed to what they're doing. And raise everybody. Everybody raises up to the highest octave. Now this is a little bit, now this is wonderful and beautiful philosophy, but we have to put that into action because we look okay, we think I'll act according to my nature. That must mean I must express my likes and my dislikes. And of course we know in yoga, we have to be able to transcend those likes and dislikes, to neutralize those likes and dislikes. And it doesn't mean that at all. Again, likes and dislikes, I've often liked to say that these two, all of us have likes and dislikes. And so how am I going to act? How should I act in life if I don't, how do I know what to do? And I don't necessarily know the right thing to do. So what do I do? Well, likes and dislikes, of course, get us into trouble, but even they can be understood as part of the gunas on 3 different levels as well. And what the Gita says in this very same section, what the Gita says is the gunas, the tamoguna would be the likes and dislikes expressed, is repulsion and attraction. And it says avoid at all costs, acting from attraction and repulsion. They're just 2 sides of the same coin. And he says they're binding to you. They're binding to karma. That's, you might say, tamoguna. Rajaguna is more what I think most of us find ourselves involved in. They're ordinary likes and dislikes. I like it, I don't like it. They too, they're binding, but not quite so bad as the other one. But nevertheless, that's the world, the rajasic tendency that we live in lifetime after lifetime. But at least they're better than the other. But then, if we have those, and let's just to say this is probably the world that we're living in, most of us, liking this, not liking that, not extremely, but there they are. What we might want to do is think about how can I transmute those to a little bit higher level. And I think of the sattvic expression of likes and dislikes as preferences. Make things a preference. Because you have to act, and don't act from likes and dislikes, but think of it as acting from preferences. I prefer vanilla ice cream over strawberry ice cream. But if you give me strawberry, it's okay. And I just prefer it, but I'm not attached to it, you see. A preference is an inclination. I'm inclined. Nature, all of us have very beautifully inclinations that differ one from the other. And that's good. I mean, that's how it is. But if we're attached to it, that's when it becomes the binding thing. But if it's merely an inclination, that's just natural. You might say the nature of things. And so think in terms of preferences, if you can think. Now, I prefer it to be hot or warm as opposed to cold. But if it's cold, I'm okay. I prefer it to be cold, but if it's hot, I'm okay. You see, that's you find if you can turn your likes and dislikes merely into preferences, you'll find that you're not going to be bound. And you find that whatever the situation is that you find yourselves in, you're going to be fine with it. You won't be attached to it. And little by little, you'll find that you begin to enjoy everything. And now I wanted to read something Swami wrote about this because he says it in this book better than I can say it. And he says it this way. First, he's talking about attraction and repulsion. Attraction and repulsion are extreme forms of likes and dislikes. To like anything excessively is, virtually by definition, just as great an error as to dislike its opposite. The realization of God depends on neutralizing all one's reactions, on leveling out their peaks and valleys and seeing the one changeless spirit in the heart of everything. Okay, so now how do you do this? How do you do this? And this is where an interesting thing, you might not think of it this way. He says the secret is not to cease from enjoying anything. See, many people think to be non-attached, to be detached, is to be, the pseudo-yogi, I'm detached. I'm above it all. And he says, Swami says that doesn't work. He says that solution leads only to apathy and in consequence to a deadening of awareness. He says the secret is to not cease from enjoying anything. So what he's saying, enjoy everything. So in other words, expand your sense of joy from a little self so that everything, and so when you have no binding desires, they're just merely preferences. I can enjoy vanilla, I can enjoy chocolate, I can enjoy strawberry. It doesn't matter. I prefer vanilla. That's okay. But I enjoy them all. And so that would be sort of what you would say. Then he goes on to say this is the deadening of awareness. The secret, rather, is to take every enjoyment into the heart, to feel its cause is lying there in your reactions, and then to draw that energy consciously upward in the spine, from the heart to the brain. Now, this was also something I thought was nice, because people worry a lot about ordinary, little likes and dislikes. He says, think of it this way. Ordinary likes and dislikes are not, as such, man's enemies. Rather, they are like troublesome neighbors. Think of that. Think of that. These things that oh my God, they're troublesome neighbors. You don't court them. You kind of wish they could go away. You put earplugs in, maybe when they're too noisy, but you don't overreact to it. You see, you don't overreact to it or beat yourself up. Take the positive approach. He said, extreme forms of these emotions, likes and dislikes, however, strong attraction, violent repulsion, can plunge a person into violent storms of emotion and toss him helplessly on the great waves of delusion. Some people do have ugly traits. Don't waste energy in reacting to them. Somebody bothers you, right? I mean, have anybody ever had that problem? It says, don't waste energy reacting to them, neither by dislike nor by abhorrence. Don't welcome them into your galaxy of interests. Move through life like a swan, rather, off of whose back the rain flows lightly, never touching its body. That's a Paramahansa. Isn't that so? Moving through life, not being touched by it. But I think coming back, I'll just close with this, is take the positive approach to life. I think this was Master Yogananda's, this was his approach to life, is don't reject life. Sometimes something, there's all these, life is full of things that you can react to, and you say, oh, I can't. And you block so much that you become paralyzed. Rather expand your sympathies. Yoga is not a rejection of anything. It's an embrace of everything. You see, make ourselves. That's the way to infinity. The other may have its place for some people of that temperament, or maybe the better way to say that, people of that nature. You might say that's okay too. But I think Yogananda's way was to embrace everything and love everything. Enjoy life in a good way, in a pure way. Enjoy things, but not personally. In detached ways, seeing God in everything.